It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey Not the Face with your host John Nash and your producer me, Steffi Haynes. And today we have a hodgepodge episode. For the last several weeks we have been doing targeted episodes, but today we're doing a bit of a hodgepodge. We're going to skip and jump all around. We're going to talk about Sean Strickland and Jessica Andrade and even Kenny Florian. We are also going to talk a bit about the Ali Revival Act from a facet that we haven't really looked at before. Or maybe we have, but it's just been super brief. So we're going to touch down on that again today. And the new signings from PBC and DAZN. And if, you know, Zuffa Boxing is maybe forcing a little bit of competition amongst the promoters, some good, healthy competition. But before we get into all of those things, we would ask that you subscribe to us with your money because it helps us keep the lights on more than anything else. Yes, it gives you access to our paywalled content. So yeah, it helps you out too. But for us, you are really helping us keep the lights on around here. And we thank you for that. If you would, also, please share our work. Maybe you can't afford a subscription. Share our work. That helps too. So, John, how the heck are you?
Well, as you know, terrible, because people listening should know Crooklyn here commands before I start the show, because as everybody's familiar with my coughing problem, which has gotten worse since I got bronchitis here, surviving bronchitis over here. She makes me suck down a whole ladle full of honey before the show, and it went down the wrong pipe. And now I might gag
No,
it even
your
worse.
tea went down the wrong pipe. You're the one that insists on chasing it down with tea real fast.
Well, that was, it goes well with tea. It doesn't go well by itself. So this is more honey than tea here too. So
yeah, and the point behind the honey is to coat your throat. It is a proven fact through many, many tests that honey coats your throat better than dextromethorphan. So it's better for coughs, better for suppressing a cough than dextromethorphan is, which is like the most common cough medication in the entire universe. So if honey is better than that, I figure that if you were to take a teaspoon of honey, I'm not telling you to take a ladleful. I told you to take a teaspoon of honey. You are the one that gets way, way carried away.
Well, I'm just going to say that my throat is properly coated with honey. So are probably my lungs and my intestines and every innard coated with honey at this point.
All your gizzards.
More honey than man.
All your gizzards are coated in honey.
Yeah, I mean, I do not want to die and have to go through an autopsy because they'll be wondering what the fuck is going on.
Ooh, John gave y'all a free fuck at the beginning of the show. Normally, that's behind the paywall.
I respectfully ask everybody to subscribe now because that was not meant to be free.
Oh my goodness! So let's talk turkey here. Everybody that listens to the show already knows what I'm going to ask first. Are there any new filings or updates to the UFC antitrust cases?
Well, there is. Yes, there is a filing and there would be an update. Today, there was a status conference. But unfortunately, I'm working, so I couldn't go to Vegas to attend. Alessandro Gelki was not available as our roving reporter. He could not attend. So no one that I know in the media or the public attended the status conference. I know Ed Vidri, who sometimes suggests he'll go. I don't think he went. We should ask him. He can probably comment to us if he went. I doubt he did. But we don't really know what happened. Now, I have a suspicion that it was not groundbreaking today because, as we all know, with the fiasco that was the court-appointed expert, a lot of things were canceled. And I think it was mostly just paperwork upkeep. There were a few things going. There was some discovery disputes, and we did get a minute order that came out, but right now we cannot see what the minute order is. The minute order is like the judge's order that came out after the court. And usually, I don't know why it works this way in Pacer. When Judge Bulwer issues it, it often will take a couple days to see what his actual minute order is. So one did come up, but we don't know what it is. But there was a joint summary, joint status report that was filed by the plaintiffs and the defendants that was issued. And the status report was for this August 6th conference, and it raises 6 discovery disputes. So that's the one thing we have to talk about today is the status report that came out. Now, next week, I should get more details of what was discussed at the status conference, if we're discussing. At the worst, what we might have to do, if no one will talk about it, maybe something amazing happened and no one will talk about it. Although I am, maybe one of the Vegas reporters showed up. Maybe. I doubt it, but maybe. But if no one was there, if we can't find anybody who's there and no one's willing to talk about it because, it was so amazing today, then worst case scenario, we got to wait 30 days for the transcript to come out. Oh. And then we'll know what happened. But I'm suspicious right now. I'm suspecting that it was not a major event because of all the stuff that happened before and what was on the docket, for today. So let's get to that joint summary or joint status report that was filed. In it, the 6 discovery disputes are, one was over search terms. The plaintiffs want nearly 4,000 search strings run across 57 custodians, which spans from July 2015 to January 2026, yielding 3 million plus hits on original custodians alone and 2.27 million more on the 30 proposed additional custodians. And for those wondering, custodians are the people that have discovery information that you want hand it over for discovery. So a custodian to be Dana White is a major custodian because he has tons of material they want to see. The plaintiffs, they also want to apply their existing 1,317 terms, which had already produced 830,000 documents, to new custodians, plus go get targeted collection, which I'm not quite certain what that means, for the original 27. They are also offering a fallback counterproposal of 151 tighter terms, which yield 768,000 hits. The second discovery dispute was over ephemeral messaging. Named plaintiffs, which are Johnson. These are the guys that are filed the suit. So if you're a fighter out there, you should be thanking these guys because they're the ones doing all the damn work for you. These are Cajun Johnson, CB Dalloway, and Tristan Connolly. All apparently use Signal Telegram, but have produced 0 messages from either platform, which is ironic because that's one of the complaints the plaintiffs have about the defendants. And so the defendants have moved to compel on August 4th. The plaintiffs have... You mean
the plaintiffs have moved to compel?
No, the defendants have moved to compel. Defendants want the named plaintiffs to hand over their Signal Telegram messages.
Saying. Okay.
Another dispute is over the plaintiff's production deficiency. Zufa TKO alleges that text files and other data, missing metadata, including some 3,200 chat files and thousands of blank pages marked attorney's eyes only, despite containing no content. So they're questioning if the plaintiffs, because remember, discovery works both ways. The defendants have to hand over, and they also can request stuff from the plaintiffs. There's a dispute over a motion to compel combat sports documents. The defendants want discovery on fighters' opportunities outside mixed martial arts in the U.S. market, relevant to market definition fights in the Section 2 claim, Section 2 of the Sherman Act here. It cites Sean Shelby's testimony on UFC's global reach and references, most valuable promotions, Jake Paul Tyson fight, as evidence of competitive alternatives. I do always kind of laugh at that because you're talking about one exception, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. I'm not sure any UFC fighter who's locked and signed into the UFC contract can't get out, even though they want to. As we talk about this, a lot of fighters would like, not a lot, but a few fighters would like to get out of their current contracts and go over to Netflix and get probably a life-changing paycheck, and they can't do it. So it is kind of amusing to me that they cite the most valuable promotions, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, as an example, when no fighter can do that. Then there's another dispute over the missing materials dispute. Zuffa TKO, the defendant, says it's evidence of missing promotional and auxiliary PARs, which are promotional and auxiliary agreements. Rights agreement, has shrunk dramatically. Plaintiff's own tracker admission moved from 4% coverage on June 12th to 86.2% as a filing. Also flags errors in plaintiff's trackers. 337 of these PARs, which again are promotional and auxiliary rights agreements, deleted without explanation. 110 omitted class members. So there's some discussion of that. Another dispute, the final dispute, is over the digital device proposal. This is the maybe the most exciting, sexiest section, very arousing for me. The plaintiffs, via Berger Montague, following up on Dana White's wiped iPhone issue, which we have freaking talked endlessly about, want forensic extractions of 23 devices across 6 custodians. They want Dana White's, Hunter Campbell's, Sean Shelby's, Mick Maynard's, Tracy Long's, and I cannot remember the first name of Bachvavorova, including a detailed 2-phase protocol, which they submitted as Exhibit A, and a Merriman and Associates forensic redaction methodology is Exhibit B, which they submitted in this, for stripping, reinserting message content around privilege. Zuffa TKO calls this an evidentiary Frankenstein, and says their experts estimate 12 to 24 months to execute, and argues it's forensically unsound. Which they have transaction logs for encrypted stores, redaction, then reinsertion, breaking, redaction, then reinsertion, breaking the chain of custody, and is, according to the defendants, is disproportionate under the Rule 26. So the exhibits include the actual redacted device inventory. The serial numbers are blacked out, of course, because they have to do that, and includes Merriman's, the company they want to use, full technical protocol, plus a Python redaction script for keyless-based data, which is, I'm sure, very exciting for people out there. But that's right now the status reports. They're still squabbling over this stuff. I don't know what the judge is ruling. I'm sure the minute order directly relates to this that came out today, but we will not know that for another day or two, so we can report on that next week.
Just to clarify, Dana is one of the people that holds the phones, the emails, etc. That's why he's one of the what did you call them?
The custodians. The
custodians. So that's why he's a custodian, right? It's because they possess a phone or an email address or a signal address. It's the ones that actually have the content that they want to look at, right? That is why they're custodians, because they're the owners of those email addresses and phones and so on, right?
Yes. I mean, that's exactly. And when you're talking about legal discovery, a custodian is a person, or I guess a person, employee, or group, you can put them together, who has possession, has custody, or control of physical or electronically stored information or documents that are relevant to a lawsuit. That's all it means. It's not like they're, they have they're not a special individual assigned by the court. They're called custodians because they have information that's relevant to the suit, and they have a responsibility to protect it, which they do not seem to have done the best job, people involved in this case, perhaps even the plaintiff side, according to today's filing. They have a responsibility to preserve it, protect it, and to hand it over.
All right, there you have it. I just figured that people might want a better description of what a custodian was. Unfortunately, my brain drew a complete blank on the word custodian that you said like 5 different times during your explanation of the points that were going to be argued. So
it's understandable. I have a very hypnotic, melodious voice that could be on the BBC and lull you into a drowsy state that hypnotize you.
It's the honey.
What we're talking about.
It's the honey.
Exactly.
All right, so let's move on because we need to discuss the Ali Act and the Ali Revival Act a little bit. So first things first, what is the Protect College Sports Act, and how can it affect the Ali Revival Act?
Yeah, well, this was a story that came up today a little bit. There's an announcement on this. Well, first, the Protect College Sports Act of 2026 is what they're calling it. There actually are two bills that have been submitted, one in the Senate, one in the House. They are bipartisan because they have people on both sides supporting them. Federal bills aimed at creating a uniform national framework for college athletics. This comes in the wake of some very famous, big, major antitrust cases, not antitrust, class action. Well, yeah, I mean, they're antitrust. What am I saying? Alston, and then there's the House v. NCAA settlement. And so the key elements of these bills is they want to prohibit schools, conferences, and associations like the NCAA from restricting athletes' NIL agreements, requiring athletes to report NIL compensation over $600 and require agents to register with a state. And they want to cap agent fees at 5%. They want to guarantee one-time penalty fees for transfers of athletes with extra allowances for transfers. If a head coach leaves, the school drops the sport. They have a bunch of reasons. They want to preempt conflicting state and local laws on the NILs and transfers and eligibility, and give targeted, this is the one that gets me always, give targeted antitrust protection for national rules that comply with the acts. They're basically granting an antitrust exemption, kind of like what Major League Baseball had for a long time. They want to amend the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 to extend its media rights antitrust exemption to college sports, letting schools and conference pool and sell media rights jointly, while separately banning mergers between conference that each generate over $1 billion in revenue. The other titles addressed academic protections, medical protections, all these other stuff. And so it's a big bill. And on one hand, I understand why someone did point out to me on X today. They question why Congress is worried about this. And there's a freaking war going on in the Gulf, right? Like, it's not a priority. And I sympathize with that view. The thing is, though, if you're a Democrat, right, you have no control over the war. You're the party out of power. So you can only work on stuff you have some influence on, and they have some influence on this. So I understand why they want to work on other bills on stuff they can address. Now, on this bill, I also can understand why some people want to address college sports, because college sports' big concern has to be that with the NILs and what's going on in college sports, they're just going to be viewed as basically a pro sport. The thing college sports always had going for is the illusion it was fake, with the illusion that it was amateur sports. And this applies to, we've talked about them before, this applies to all non-UFC promotions, what I'm going to say next. Is the big concern is if they are viewed as a pro sport, then really they're just a minor league to the NFL. And that's their concern, is they're not going to be viewed as something separate, but as a minor league to the NFL. And the history of sports shows us, if you're viewed as a minor league, fans are not as interested in you. And that is one of the things that's been hurting every promotion not named the UFC since at least Strikeforce was bought, but probably since Pride. Is that everybody is viewed as a minor league, and that hurts them tremendously because you're second tier automatically just by default. And that's a concern with college sports because they're worried it'll affect viewership if they become a minor league. So they want to address that. But the bill, as written by Ted Cruz and others, I think is horseshit because it really, in many ways tries to throw the screw over the athletes to give the college teams and the NCAA what they want. And so right now, the news that came out is the Black Congressional Caucus has decided not to support this bill. And that was pretty big. Now, how does that apply to the Ali Act, right? That's the question we're discussing. What does this have to do with the Ali Act? Well, I had heard, talking to people, staff for people in the Senate and the House when they contacted us, there has been discussions or rumors. No one told me point blank. No one told me that they had 100% confirmation, but there had been some rumors, I guess, or some word going around that members of the Black Congressional Congress had made a decision. Black Congressional Caucus had made a decision to endorse or support the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act as almost like a quid pro quo in in favor of getting some input on the college sports bill. And if you look at who's the co-sponsors on the bill in the House, there's 13 co-sponsors. The majority of Democrats are all members of the CBC. So that seems to confirm what people were telling me. So the question is now, if this bill is dead, are they, the Congressional Black Caucus, are they going to support, throw their support behind the Ollie Act? Are they still going to endorse it and support it and pass it if it gets ever before a full vote of the Senate and the House? That's a big question, because apparently there was some, bartering involving the SAVE Act, and that's dead now. So, it's possible that the opponents, if there still are opponents, because we don't, what's going on with some of the detractors of the bill have slightly changed their tune. If there still are opponents to the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act, they might have got some help there by the fact that a group of people that seem like they were endorsing or supporting the bill have perhaps no longer have the same reason to support it.
Yeah. I would say they more than slightly changed their tune. It seems that they just stopped singing their tune entirely now. So, know.
I mean, that's a hint at Nico Ali Walsh and his manager, Amir Abdullah. I can't say anything, because the thing I'm waiting for, and it might take some time for him to actually go through the bill and see what changes there are and, what it really means. The thing you're waiting for is, does he endorse this bill or not?
Mm-hmm.
If he endorses it, that changes my, that will change my views or cause me to finally come to a conclusion. But if in a couple of weeks or whatever, he comes out and says he still opposes the bill, well, then we're just in the, we're at the same place we were.
Okay. Now, you had a conversation on Twitter about possible violations to the current Ali Act, the way it stands right now. And that conversation was regarding undisclosed offers. Explain what the rule or lack thereof is about undisclosed offers. Just explain the whole conversation for us.
Well, first I want to note, I got to make a note about some people on X, right? Because there are some people that are intellectually challenged on X that cover or want to cover boxing, that have strong opinions of Zuffa boxing and the Ali Act. And I can tell they've done no research in it besides plug it into AI. And you can kind of tell that because AI does not give you an accurate reply, because what it does, it just searches surface levels comments, and it doesn't delve into deep dive into the issue and give you a full answer. It just gives a surface answer or replies on, confirming whatever, statement that was presented for it last, because it's not such an important issue that has a wealth of information to read and use. So there's just a segment of Boxing X that is just, I am surprised, because I've generally found people on boxing, and this obviously is not directed to a lot of the people I like on boxing. This is not directed to Jake Donovan. That guy was on this feed with me, this thread with me. That guy's very smart. Matt Brown and over at Brunch Boxing doesn't. I'm not implying him. It's just a bunch of people I've basically never heard of, but they keep popping up on my thread. So I had to get that off my chest, because they're just a group of people that I just do not know where they come from and what their thinking is. But to get to the question at hand, there was a tweet or X or whatever what is Twitter calling or X calling their tweets now? Just posts.
Posts.
Yeah, shits. I don't know. But there was a X post from Anthony Gurgis, the boxing manager of Noel Mikhailian, I believe it is, the guy that's going to be fighting Xiaopatai, or at least going to be challenging him supposedly. He had a post talking about complaining, I guess, about what Don King, hiding the Zuffa offer from him and his client. And according to his post, he, at the end of it, he said the fact that they did not share this offer is a clear violation of the Ali Act. And a lot of people ran with this claim, oh, that's an obvious violation of the Ollie Act. And I had to post a comment on that. Mine was just, and I'll just read my X post, based on a textual reading. I don't see an Ollie Act violation here, okay? Though you could argue it breaks the spirit of the law. And so some people, Jake Donovan, again, very smart guy, he wondered if it did not violate Section 13 of the current act. And for those who are not aware, Section 13 is about disclosure. I'll use the U.S. Code here. For disclosure from a promoter to a boxer, according to the U.S. Code, the way it appears in law, it says a promoter shall not be entitled to receive any compensation directly or indirectly in connection with a boxing match until provides to the boxer promotes the amount of any compensation or consideration that a promoter has contracted to receive from such a match. So some people, I think, most people said this is where the violation of the Ollie Act is. And if you hear that, listening to that, the problem is that it's details that a promoter shall not be entitled to receive any compensation directly or indirectly in connection with the box match until it provides to the boxer it promotes that information, right? And that's the issue. There is no compensation here because Don King turned down the offer. And there is main event versus Lacey set precedent for this. So until the promoter is eligible to receive the compensation, that's when they have to, by that point, they have to disclose to the boxer how much revenue they got coming in. And so this would not be a violation based on the textual reading. Now, there is a possibility, I think, that you can make an argument there might have been a violation of the Ollie Act by Don King Promotions here, but you can't use a textual reasoning. Now, textual, for people who might not be aware, textual is just the plain, ordinary meaning of the text. You read the text and you're like, oh yeah, it states clearly what the bill says, right? What the law says. But you could use, there's another way to interpret it, intentionalism, where you try to figure out what the specific authors of the law intended to do, or purposivism, where you look at the broad problems that Congress or legislation was trying to address. And I've talked about this in the past. I did a whole article on how under intentionalism, that's the reason we know that promoters are not allowed to have their own titles. But that's one is easier to interpret because even though the bill for the Ollie Act doesn't say directly that promoters cannot have their own title, if you look through the legislative history, you see examples of the intent of the Congress, what the intent of the bill was. And it seems clear reading that the intent was that promoters should not have control over titles. Here, though, the problem is, again, I've gone through the legislative history and I've read all the reports. I don't recall ever seeing anything that addressed this specific issue about disclosure. The intent of disclosure, as made clear in the Ollie Act, was that promoters were making money, getting revenues that the fighter did not know about. And so the purpose of the bill was the promoter, I should say, had to disclose to the boxer the revenues, the compensation they were receiving. But again, in this case, the fight was never made. The offers turned down. So there was no money being made by Don King. So I do not think that would apply. Now, where it possibly, I think you could make an argument, a possible Ollie Act argument, is that it's the promoter manager firewall is where you possibly could bring up an Ollie Act violation. And the way you would do that here, depending on a few things, depending on primarily if the boxer had a contract with Don King that said that Don King, or that if the boxer fought for any other promoter, Don King got a percentage of that boxer's purse. That's a common contract in boxing. There's a common section in contracts, common clause that often says if a boxer fights for another promoter, either through a purse bid or just goes fights for another promoter, they have to pay their promoter something like 20 to 30% of their purse. So it gives a boxer a chance to take fights from someone else besides the promoter, and the promoter gets something out of it because they theoretically invested into that boxer. And so if that's the case, I think the claim would be made that if you look at the definition of a manager under the U.S. code. The manager is defined as, the term manager means a person who receives compensation for services as an agent or representative of a boxer. Well, that's a pretty broad explanation. The promoter term is, the term promoter means the person primarily responsible for organizing, promoting, and producing a professional boxing match. So those are very broad terms, but we know for a fact that Zuffa Boxing, for example, as Nick Khan testified, they want the bill modified in some ways because they think the bill has to be amended to allow them to operate, to sell the fighters sponsorship rights and image rights, because of this definition of manager and promoter. So my theory would be you would have to have that provision in the contract that Don King gets a percentage if you go fight for someone else. And then you would make the claim that because Don King collects a percentage when I go fight for someone else, he can potentially be operating as a manager because he can then serve as an agent or representative. And because he refused to pass that information on to my manager or me, the boxer, he made the decision, thus operating as a manager. And then if he's a manager and a promoter, well, me as a boxer that fights in 10 and 12 round fights, he's in violation of the firewall between a promoter and a manager. I think that is a potential way you could argue it. But again, it would be dependent on what the contract says, and it'd be a novel case and you'd have to win in court, but it leaves an opening. But it is amusing, this whole situation. It's somewhat amusing that a lot of the supporters of Zuffa's effort to amend the Ali Act are also the ones claiming this is an obvious violation of the Ali Act and that it should be enforced. Well, that is ironic in some ways because what you guys want is the Ali Act to be amended so that this line of attack, the one I described, couldn't even be used, that there'd be no method to arguing that a boxer, a manager a promoter, I should say, was crossing the line as operating as a manager. And also the model that you want instituted is one like the UFC, where the argument that you make, what's an Ali Act violation, doesn't apply to UFC fighters at all because the Ali Act doesn't exist there. And so I just find it somewhat amusing that the biggest supporters of the amendment in Zuffa Boxing, what they're doing, are the same ones very upset that this is not being taken seriously and being enforced as an Ali Act violation.
Indeed. All right, so we're going to keep to the boxing content for right now. Matchroom Boxing CEO, he was on the Business of Sport podcast. Was there anything particularly interesting that he discussed there?
There was. This is a very good interview, and I suggest everybody just go watch if you're a fan of the show and you're a fan of business.
Can I ask you something? Yeah. Is this the one where the quote came out that he said, "We pay less"?
Yes, this is the exact one.
Okay.
And I think he was, to me, it doesn't sound great, but it makes some sense what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. But what I found interesting mostly was their discussion about how, at least their attempt to claim that Zuffa Boxing is not going to be able to monopolize, will not be able to compete in the boxing landscape like they think they will. And again, this strikes me as, these are smart guys. Smith here, Frank Smith, is a very smart guy. Eddie Hearn is a very knowledgeable, experienced, skilled boxing promoter. I think it's obvious. Everybody in boxing seems, skilled in boxing, but I'm always amazed at how naive they seem to be approaching TKO, because as he spells out, and this again is something very interesting in the interview, the margin.
To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Okay, the face!